Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host, Dom Corbs, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Corbs. And Nick, today, we're going to be going over our top 5 edge rushers ahead of the 2025 NFL Draft.
Yeah, Dom, it's been an interesting one to scout. We'll talk more about it in the app, but looking forward to get into it.
Well, let's get straight into it. But before we do, if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed for more draft content. Me and New are churning out the mock drafts. We're churning out the position rankings. If you haven't already, go and check out the mock drafts. Go and check out, we've done tight ends and we've done wide receivers. We're going to be coming at you with all of them again, with all of the different positions. So subscribe for all the draft content from the two funny British brothers, because that was in a comment last week, and we love the ego boost. So this year's edge class is a very interesting one. For those of you that don't know the ins and outs of the class, I think there's really clear-cut tiers of guys, I believe. I think at the top you've got difference-making pass rushers. Then after that, you've kind of got role players or people or players that have potential to be a kind of star pass rusher. But I think it's a really deep class, almost lacking some true high-end talent. But let's discuss it when we go through it. Let's start with some honorable mentions then before we get into our top 5. And before we do the honorable mentions, it is subject to change already. Even my big board, which I've referenced in a few mock drafts, I'm realizing things aren't where I like them to be. We've got the Senior Bowl happening right now. East-West Shrine Bowl is happening right now as well. So these are all subject to change. So if in a few weeks' time these players are ranked slightly differently, that's just how the draft is. But for the time being now, on the 29th of January, who are your honourable mentions?
Well, Dom, I just want to build off what you said before. I do believe it's the deepest class in the draft. I've seen many 9 different guys be going in the first round. Maybe not all in one draft, but ranging, fluctuating massively, as some of the guys we'll talk about later. So I found it actually quite difficult to evaluate because so many of them have such different skill sets. So my honorable mentions is Shamar Stewart, the D lineman from Texas A&M. I'll start with him quickly. Very good. I think he's more of a prototypical defensive lineman, good defensive end, good run stopper, has some pass rush moves. But a big issue with him, Dom, he's not a very good tackler. He falls off tackles all the time. And as a defensive end, your main job is to finish the play. You can influence it as much as you like, but he just falls off these running backs. And as you've seen in the NFC Championship game with Saquon, if you're going up against someone elite, doesn't matter if you can get to him, you need to beat him to the ground. So that's why he's still only an honourable mention for me.
Anyone else before I do mine?
Well, Dom, you go first. We'll alternate.
So I'm going to be lower on this guy than I think a lot of people are. And my 7th ranked, so my first of 2 honorable mentions, is going to go to Nick Skoughton, the edge from Texas A&M. I think he's definitely someone that is splitting opinion at the moment. I think it started off being I think maybe because of the PFF draft board, which is the one that kind of everyone uses, the mock draft simulator, he was quite high initially. But when I watch him, his strengths, he's a good power rusher. He's big. He's he's 6'4", 285 pounds. He can be moved around the defensive line, so he can play kind of more on the interior. He can play as an edge rusher. He's obviously really powerful because of that weight. It gives him quite a high floor, I think. Having a power rush move like that bull rush move is always used in the NFL, and he's good with his hands as well to counter if the tackle does land the punch. Weaknesses though, he tries to win with finesse too often. I just want him to kind of just go, basically. And if he doesn't win immediately, he can kind of just get swallowed up. He does have a counter, but it's not effective enough yet to the point whereby, if that tackle does land the punch, Nick Skoughton's basically a non-factor on that play. He plays with a pretty high pad level. He was really good when he was at Purdue, but this year's definitely taken a step back in his production and his play. So for me, and I think he lacks bend coming around the corner. I kind of see Nick Skoughton as kind of a tweener. He doesn't really exist properly on the edge, I don't think, and isn't really going to move inside either. So I think he's kind of almost confined by the fact that he does so many things to an okay level. I don't really see his path to playing, which I think is quite tricky when you're projecting an edge rusher. So I'm not in love with Nick Skoughton. I'm not going to lie. And then I've got one more honorable mention before.
Yeah, I'll just quickly build off Nick Skoughton. He just goes missing on so many players in so many games. He's got a complete non-factor. And for me, that's a massive worry because, he might get a sack, might get a pressure, and, that might be a highlight. But in the rest of the other 60 defensive snaps he plays, he doesn't do anything. And for him being such non-factor in so many snaps, really, he's number 8 ranked for me, Dom.
We see him similarly. We see him similarly. Do you have one more honorable mention before we get into the top
Yeah,
five?
so almost the exact opposite of Nick Skelton. I've got Landon Jackson, defensive lineman from
you know what?
Arkansas.
He's someone I need to watch more. So tell me about him.
So him, similar to my number 5 overall player, I'll talk later, he's probably going to get the most snaps out of all the defensive ends we talk about here. In next year in the draft, he's going to play 3 downs as a rookie. He's going to be a good impact player. The issue is there's very limited upside. He's good with his hands, good against the run, good tackler. He's almost very polished as a prospect, but he just doesn't have that 10 to 15 sack upside that a first round pick is worth. He doesn't have that game wrecking upside that a first round pick is worth. So because of that, he's a low second, high first for me, but he will play the majority of snaps for whatever team he's drafted for, and I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, he said at the Senior Bowl that he's been playing some inside as well, that he's kind of like trying to essentially play wherever he thinks the league is going to need him. So I think he's identified that he's not going to be like a pure edge, pin your ears back and go after the pass. He's going to be a bit more of a role player. So, good for him for identifying that, because, look, he wants to play in the NFL. And the thing is with edge rushers, is it's not always about just can you rush the passer? Like, it is a defensive line position. It's a general defensive position. You've got to be able to tackle. You've got to be able to stop the run. You've got to be able to set the edge. So it's not just about pinning your ears back and pass rushing, which I think I'm going to talk about, well, not now, but my next player, actually. But my final honorable mention, is going to be Jack Sawyer. I don't know.
Oh, okay. We'll discuss him. I'm a big fan.
So I really like Jack Sawyer, and I'm kind of torn on how to describe him, because I fear that if I say he's got aura, I'm falling into the coach's kid, hard lunch pail kind of guy. Am I just saying he's got aura because he's a white edge rusher? Like, am I gonna compare him to DJ Watt and Aiden Hutchinson?
Yeah, is he Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa-esque?
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting real Aiden Hutchinson vibes from this guy. Like, the thing is with Jack Sawyer though, is he's the kind of player who the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like, he doesn't really excel at anything, but is good at everything. And he's got this fantastic 2-arm swipe, which genuinely is TJ Watt-esque. Like, that's how TJ Watt wins all the time, is that double hand push down. And he was dog walking Cameron Williams with that in the Texas game. Like, when Jack Sawyer got home from that game, he took his keys, his phone out, and he took Cameron Williams out of his pocket, because it was an annihilation out there. Like, 6 total pressures, strip sack, which ended the game when he returned it for a touchdown. Like, Jack Sawyer has a really high motor. He's got a good bucket of pass rush moves. He can set an edge. He's a really good tackler, like you say. Like, if you're on the field and you're missing tackles on running backs, you're not going to be on the field for very long, especially in the NFL, where if you can tackle one of these guys and you don't, they're going to break it for a 60-yard run. So you need guys that are sure tacklers. I really like Jack Sawyer. I think he's what you see is what you get. Like, is he going to be an elite or even a great NFL pass rusher? No, I don't think so. But I think he's going to be a good number 2. Like, genuinely, he is a Lion through and through. He's a Lions player. Like, maybe I'm falling victim to like just saying Aiden Hutchinson on one side, Jack Sawyer on the other. But it's that kind of player that fits the Lions so well. Is that high motor? Like, he'll be a great compliment to Aiden Hutchinson. They've always needed another edge rusher opposite him. Obviously, you're not really going to be able to get another one rusher on the other side when you have Hutchinson, when you're picking as late as you are as the Lions. But Jack Sawyer, I really like him. I don't think his ceiling is that high, but I think he'll start from like day one basically, and will make quietly quite a good impact on whatever defense drafts him.
Well, Dom, I couldn't have said it better. He's my number 5 player for that reason. I mentioned about Landon Jackson, 3-down player, going to make an impact. Jack Sawyer is just the better version of that, and he did it at a higher level and more consistently. And Dom, what you said about being a number 2 is perfect. I think so often we only evaluate edge rushers on being the number 1 guy. Is when we evaluate receivers, he'd be a good number 2, still worth a first-round pick. It should be the same for defensive end. You see the Lions, I think the Bengals with Trey Hendrickson as well.
Yeah.
I think he'd slot in perfectly there. Here's
that.
someone who can give you 6 to 7 sacks a year, 15 pressures a year, and consistently make their tackles. And there is nothing wrong with being good. He will have more production in his rookie year than a lot of the guys we're going to talk about. I think we'll both be in agreement about that.
I agree.
I think a lot of the time people get conned into drafting players that they're not actually seeing, that they think they're seeing or want to see. With Jack Sawyer, what you see is what you get. And there's nothing wrong with a good player who's played at a high level for many years.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think he's going to be a great second round pick, frankly. Like, I think he's going to be a really good second round pick.
I've got a first round grade on him, but
I don't think he'll go in the.
We are agreeing.
I don't think he'll go in the first. I don't think he'll go in the first. But I think he'd be really good. Like he'd be really good on the Chiefs, with like playing next to Chris Jones, who are going to pick at the end of the first. Obviously, like maybe the Eagles if they want to add to their defensive line rotation. I really like Jack Sawyer. But anyway, my 5th ranked player then, is one that you've already mentioned, so we don't have to hark on him for too long. Is Shamar Stewart. Now he's an edge, but is kind of also a bit of the Texas A&M defensive line this year with Nick Scouten and Shamar Stewart was very interesting to watch because like Shamar Stewart is 6'5", 281 pounds. Like this guy's big. Like he's more of a defensive lineman, like you were saying earlier yourself, Nu, than just like an edge rusher. He's got a great combination of speed, power, length, and mass. And he can move really well. Like there was a game against Arkansas where he was unblocked, was able to tackle the quarterback and the running back at the handoff and force the fumble. Like this guy's quick, 6'5", should not move like that. And he uses that length, 75th percentile arm length, 34 and a quarter inches. He uses that length really well. Like he can create knockback at the point of attack. He can set the edge really well, and he can disengage and try and make the tackles. My weakness is for Shamar Stewart, though, that his pass rush moves are there, but they still need developing. And when he's not using his length, so when he's trying to use a chop move or a push pull, or just essentially when he's not trying to just like long arm the offensive tackles or the offensive guards, it can be a bit badly timed, not that impactful. And I think sometimes he lets offensive linemen get into his chest too easily. Like he's 6'5", he's a high cut guy. He needs to be disciplined and keep his pad level low. And he's not able to counter off that when they do get into his chest. And he's just not that accurate with his hands either. So I really like Shamar Stewart. I think he's got a really high floor, actually, and a really high ceiling. He just he needs to go to someone which is going to continue to develop him as a pass rusher. Because right now, great run defender, can offer you something in the pass rush game, but if he can continue to develop, he could be like not quite a 1, but more than a 2.
Dom, is the tackling an issue for you? Because it is for me personally. That really does scare me off because you've had enough training at this point, tackling something very fundamental. Do you think that's an issue that will affect him at the next level?
I think it will. Because I've seen it as well. When he gets into the backfield, he becomes like a bull in a china shop. Like he's just kind of like running around, like chasing, like when a dog is chasing something and you take a really tight corner and someone kind of keeps going. Like I agree with you. I think that can be refined at the NFL level. Like it's not that he can't tackle, right? He's 6'5", for God's sake. Like the guy, it's not that he doesn't have the physicality or is too light. I just think he kind of like sees almost red when he actually can light up someone in the backfield or behind the line of scrimmage and is confident, let's say,
overzealous.
Overzealous. That's a great word. Who's your number 4, Nu?
So Dom, I quickly forgot to mention my honourable mentions. I think he's more of a linebacker, but he might become an edge, Jalen Walker. But we're not going to talk about him now because I think he's more of a linebacker.
Jalen Walker. That's a great shout, Nu. I don't have Jalen Walker down as a full-time edge.
No, either do I, Dom. I just thought it's worth a mention here because he is classified as a linebacker edge or a pass rusher or an outside linebacker. But just so that people in the comments aren't asking where is he, he'll be in a linebacker video later on.
Yeah,
but if he was classified as an edge, I think he probably would be my top 5. My number 4.
Oh, well, we'll talk about him.
My number 4, a bit lower on than I think you might be, is James Pierce Jr.
No,
the edge rusher out of Tennessee.
Oh, you're a hater.
Well, Dom, hear me out first. What I would say is because I've Jack Sawyer is ranked as a first-round pick, I have James Pierce Jr. ranked as a mid-first-round pick. So 15th, 16th on my big board's not outrageous.
All right.
And the upside is there, Dom. He had 10 sacks in his sophomore season, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's pegged for the number 1 overall pick this year. But my issue is with him, Dom. He's had less than 600 pass rushing snaps. Less than 600 defensive snaps at Tennessee. And I think he's only going to be turning 20, I believe, at the time of the draft.
Yeah, he's young.
I think it's 20 at the time of the draft. So he's ridiculously young, ridiculously raw, which is why I have him 4th ranked. And it's also why I say this class is so hard to evaluate because James Pierce and Jack Sawyer are completely different players playing the same position. How do you evaluate constant production versus clear upside that is shown flashes, but can't really stay healthy, can't really stay on the pitch, and can't therefore evaluate so much on film? So James Pierce Jr. definitely has the tools. And also I think it'd be misconstrued to classify him just as a speed rusher as well, Dom. I think he's more to his game than that. Yeah. Not just pure athleticism. I think despite the lack of snaps, he does show some maturity. But for me, there's just not enough film and not enough production this year for him to be more than a mid-first round pick.
So James Pierce Jr. for me is my second
Oh,
ranked edge
okay.
rusher. So
Okay.
I'll talk about him here. I love James Pierce Jr. and I'll start with your very fair concern about the lack of snaps. Now, Tennessee had a crazy deep defensive line rotation this year. It wasn't just James Pierce Jr. that was being subbed out. It's not because he isn't fit or isn't effective in certain downs or distances. Like, everyone is coming on and off the field all the time. It's like rolling subs in five-a-side. Like, they're constantly on, constantly off. I don't know if that's because they wanted to keep every player fresh. I don't know if it's because they wanted to get more guys out there. I don't know. Obviously, different teams run things differently, and Tennessee are quite unique in that sense that they don't just like leave their best players on the field basically all times. What I love, so that can be a question mark. Absolutely, I think that's very valid, but that's not because he wasn't effective for certain. It's not because he was a package player that could only come on in third and long or obvious passing situations, right? Which sometimes lighter edge rushers like James Pierce Jr. have to do. Like Nolan Smith, for example, for the Eagles, he's not going to be on the field during 2nd and 3 because he's not going to be a value add in the run game, or more so than someone else who's heavier, right? So his strengths, though, for me, I think he's so explosive. I think his first step is elite. I think it's NFL elite, not just college elite. Like, this guy is so quick off the ball, and he is, like you say, a great speed rusher. Not just a speed rusher, but definitely, like, immediately that's what you're going to get from him is elite quickness, great speed rusher. And he's got active hands, he's got great bend. So bend is when you were trying to turn the corner around the offensive tackle. Really important for an edge rusher, obviously. The better bend you have, the easier it is to get around the tackle. It's as simple as that. And he can turn that edge really quickly. He's strong against the run and the pass, which is what I'm saying. Like, he's not just a third down pass rusher. Like, he can play the run despite his weight concerns. So he is only 145 pounds, which is 10th percentile. So he is on the lighter side.
245. Not
Sorry,
145 pounds. Yeah.
245.
Tank Dell out there.
Tank Dell's 150, mate. He's not even 160, 155. So yeah, sorry, 245 pounds. Good catch, New. But he's got great length. Like, he takes on bigger, stronger offensive lineman with his long arms, a really wide base. He had a 22.2% pass rush win rate this year, 59 pressures, 8 sacks. I love this guy. I really, really love James Pierce. Weaknesses, like I said, lack of mass. If he puts on more mass, which I'm sure some NFL teams will want him to do, is that going to impact his speed? Like, probably, right? I think he could add 5-7 pounds and it wouldn't really impact him that much. But I would hesitate to ask him to add any more than that, because I think you're taking away his greatest advantage, which is his speed. And I think he is a little bit scheme dependent. He is. He's going to be used, or I want him to be used in the right scheme, essentially as a wide 9. So that's when you're really far outside the offensive tackle and you just, with a head of steam on a runway, you have loads of space and you have the speed to close and you just work in that space. Or as like a 3-4 outside linebacker. So, 2-point stance, ready to blitz off the edge. Like, that's where I want to go.
Almost.
Sorry?
That sort of outside, Von Miller-esque. Like that
outside,
not hand in the dirt, standing up, rush on the edge.
That's a great shout. That's a great shout. Yeah, like Von Miller-esque. I'm not saying that he is Von Miller, but just that kind of how you see Von Miller win that's exactly right. And again, that Tennessee rotation, would he have had more production if he was on the field for as many snaps as other people in this class? Maybe, or it might have been a negative. We don't know, obviously, but it's definitely a question mark on his tape. But for me, the bottom line here is that, he was a slightly overhyped player to start the season. There's no way a 245-pound edge rusher was going to go first overall. But the market correction, I think, went too far this season. People were like, "Oh, James Pierce Jr., who's he? He was a hype, preseason hype. Like, he's going to be a good NFL pass rusher." Which is why I have him at 2, because I want my pass rusher. If I'm drafting a pass rusher highly, they need to be able to rush the passer. Which is why I wouldn't take Shamal Stewart in the top 10, obviously, because you're not getting that value. You need to be able to get after the quarterback, and I think James Pierce Jr. can do that, which is why I'm comfortable having him at 2, and he's my 11th currently ranked player.
Yeah, so not too far off. I think that Nolan Smith example is good. I think it's like, especially in his first couple of years, that is how he is going to be used. Even though he can play the run, he needs that time to build up that play strength. A lot of players weigh in heavy at the combine just to like satisfy a number on a chart, but they don't really play at that weight. So I think, yes, he needs maybe a bit of time to bulk up, play against the run, but he will make an impact in his rookie year, but probably just purely as a third down rusher.
Boo, no, get him on the field. So who is your third ranked player?
So Don, my third ranked player is the reason why I've got James Pearce Jr. ranked at fourth. And what you said, I think positional versatility, especially in these days in the NFL, is so important. I've learned a lot this year. It's my first year like fully evaluating defenses properly. And when you talk about the Vikings defense, which I was very wrong about this entire season, positional versatility makes such a big difference. Being able to get on the field makes such a big difference. And that's why my number 3 is Michael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. Also plays some off-ball linebacker. Edge is definitely his best position. I'm not saying he should be an outside linebacker. He should purely be an edge. But he's new to the position almost. This is his first year starting full-time at edge rusher. And he's an amazing player, Dom. He's so powerful. I would go as far to say he's the most powerful edge rusher in this draft class. With his long arm move, he pushes tackles back into the backfield. And that's why I think his pressure numbers aren't as high as how much it actually affects the game. Because even when he doesn't get pressures, he still influences the quarterback purely by being so strong that the tackles are just being put on skates. I think he's a really good player, and also he can play coverage if you need him to. I don't think you should do that play in, play out. But with the way the NFL is going, with creative blitzes, blitzing a safety, dropping a linebacker into coverage, Michael Williams will get more playtime than James Pearce, and that's why he's above him.
Okay, all right. You're kind of cooking there, New. You're kind of cooking. So Michael Williams for me is my fourth ranked. So we kind of see him fairly similarly. He's my 17th overall ranked player on my board. 6'5", 265 pounds. You highlight his biggest strength there, New. This guy has vines for arms.
Yeah,
like it's almost quite freaky. Like I've seen clips of him like warming up pre-game, and his like arms are like touching his like knees. Like it's mental, and he's got obviously incredibly high upside. I mean, the physical trait. He's an edge rusher from Georgia, right? Like that school churns out players like this for fun, and he's got that massive wingspan. He's got great movement skills. He's good in run defense. He's developing as a pass rusher, and he's shown in flashes like he could be one of the best players in this class. So I completely see where I'm coming from with him. For me, though, I don't think he's shown enough. I don't think he's shown enough as a pass rusher to warrant a high selection this year. I think he's a lottery ticket. I think if you're, say, the Bengals as kind of like a mid-first round pick and you need defensive line help, I think Michael Williams could be in play there, definitely. I don't not like him, but I don't think he's shown enough for, say, the Panthers at 8, for example, is what I'm talking about with Michael Williams. Like, the injury didn't help this year, don't get me wrong, but, I mean, I'll read you his stats over the season. So 2022, he had 33 total pressures, 6 sacks. 2023, 26 total pressures, 6 sacks. 2024, 26 total pressures, 5 sacks. So, like, he's been on a very steady, like, plateau. It's not to say he can't improve, but he had 0 pressures against Notre Dame, which is concerning because that's a big-time game. You need your big-time players to show up in big-time games, a la Jack Sawyer versus Texas. Only an 11.2% pass rush win rate. That is awful. Well, not awful, but that is not good enough. Like, he's not a developed or a refined pass rusher. He can't win with power, despite his frame and despite his physical tools, which is concerning to me because, as I've said, that's the move that NFL pass rushers use the most, is their power move or their bull rush move, whatever you prefer. And I think he's got bad hand placement. So, like, I see where you're coming from now. I really like your take that he offers you that ability to show pressure off the edge and drop back in coverage and allows a good pass rush linebacker to blitz instead. Like, I like that shout from you, absolutely. But where I'm concerned about Michael Williams is that I don't think he's going to be an effective pure pass rusher as a rookie. I think it will take him time to develop. I think he's projecting to me a bit like a Tyree Wilson low end or Trayvon Walker high end.
Yep.
So, like, and not obviously Tyree Wilson is a completely different style of player, but I'm just talking about like a player that has the tools, a player that is athletic and could potentially be one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. Trayvon Walker is becoming that. I don't think he'd be inside the top 10. He might be top 15. Who knows? Maybe that'll be an off-season video for us, is ranking those. But Tyree Wilson is 3 years in the making, and we're only just beginning to see something from him this year on a pretty terrible Raiders team. So I think there's concerns for me with Michael Williams, and I think he is a bit of a lottery pick, which is why I have him later. But if he hits, man, he's going to hit.
Yeah, Dom, I think you're right. The injury issue is he's never played a full season at Georgia. He's had 3 injuries in 3 different years. Hopefully none of them have been long-term, nothing been severe, but, it's still something to bookmark. But Dom, like I said earlier, I think he's still that pass rush win percentage that you say is 11%. I think it's slightly misleading when you watch the film. He influences plays even when he doesn't beat the passer, he beat the tackle. Excuse me, and I just personally see that upside. I think what you're saying is completely fair, but I see that upside much more than I do for James Pearce, for example. I think Michael Williams is the future of what an NFL outside linebacker edge rusher looks like. And I personally think he's worth a top 10 pick. Panthers at 8 is where I slightly draw the line. But I think as a developmental player, he has the talent and opportunity to really be a top 10 outside linebacker in the NFL. And that is worth a high pick.
Hey, look, you can justify it, and that's what I'm here for. Look, as long as you can justify your thinking, that's all I need. And look, I get where you're coming from. I just have a bit of boredom, a bit of reservedness about uber athletic, uber traitsy edge rushers who have never quite put it together. So that's what's holding me back. But look, we can agree to disagree definitely here. Now, so that must mean then, that we have the same. Well, so my third ranked player is your second ranked player.
Most likely, Don. Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall.
Yes, I love Mike Green.
So
I think after this Senior Bowl week, if he continues to play like he did today, and like he ran through Oregon tackle Josh Connolly today at practice, like ran him over, and if he continues to put out plays like that against top tier talent, I might have to move him even higher than where I have him currently at 3 and as my 15th overall player. But you start.
So just a quick side, I love the Senior Bowl one-on-ones. It's so much fun.
So
me and you are not trenches guys at all. I think our specialties in skill position, a bit more flash. But watching like a D3 center who no one's ever heard of absolutely dog a Georgia D lineman, it is my favorite thing about draft season. And these players who are unranked, who are going to go higher, we'll probably have a Senior Bowl episode coming out soon.
Yes, yeah. We'll do that next week, I think, winners and losers.
But it's... Sorry, just quick aside, I absolutely love it.
I love it.
The thing that really gets me going as a D lineman, offensive lineman, as someone who's not super invested in that position, it really gets me going. Part of that, Mike Green, edge out of Marshall. Dom, I didn't really know about him until I was prepping for this video. I must admit, he was not on the radar during the season. And obviously, Marshall's a smaller school. But Dom, 17 sacks in a year. It's ridiculous. You don't hear that at college levels. 10, 11 sacks is normally what gets you, the best pass rusher. 17 sacks is ridiculous. He's more of a prototype defensive end. I reckon more of a 3-4 defensive end than a 4-3 guy. A lot of guys are talking about speed rushers. I think he's a bit more of that standard type role. But Dom, he's great with his hands, great against the run, and he's very polished. The issue is his worst game of the season came against Ohio State.
I don't know if it did.
Oh, really? I was really disappointed by that film. Maybe it's because I was watching him against East Carolina before.
To be fair,
I was really disappointed about the Ohio State film.
To be fair, maybe I'm putting too much stock on the one spin move that he pulled off for the sack.
It was ridiculous.
That was crazy.
It was so clean.
That was crazy. I think that alone, should just give him a free pass against Ohio State. But he's 6'3", 251 pounds. Those are the official measurements. I accidentally tweeted before the Senior Bowl started because they released the measurements, quote unquote, but they were the spring measurements before they got officially measured, and he was coming in at 235 pounds. And I was like, oh God, my Mike Green, a player that I love, is actually a fraud and is basically Tank Dale at edge rusher. But he's 251 pounds, fantastic. That's good enough for me. 6'3", brilliant, good enough for me. For me, the tier of difference maker pass rusher is here. It's Mike Green, James Pearce, and then our number one player, which I'm sure is obvious to everyone at home and to ourselves, but we'll come on to him later. Mike Green is what I want from my pass rusher. He's what I want from a first round draft pick. I want him to pin his ears back and just get after it. And he can do that. He can do a lot more, like you say, good against the run, he can set a good edge, but that's what I want from my first round, top 10, potentially NFL draft pick. He's explosive, he's agile, he's a finisher, he's athletic. He had a good game against Ohio State. Like you say, it might have been a little bit underwhelming, but that spin move, oh, good grief, you've got to watch that spin move. It is so good. And like you say, 17 sacks, 56 pressures, 20.1% pass rush win rate, has a great stable of pass rush moves. He has a killer inside counter. So obviously tackles are going to overset a bit to the outside because of that threat off the edge with his speed and his explosiveness. If there is too much daylight between the tackle and the guard, Mike Green is taking that inside and he is going to kill you on it every single time. And that's great. It keeps tackles honest. It helps him win, basically. And he has a great ghost move, which I had to actually look up what that was because I'd never heard of that before. But apparently Von Miller invented it. And it's basically just when you just like completely take your chest away, like you leave the tackle punching just air, like you duck under the punch, basically, like you completely turn sideways, dip low, and it's just so good. Like it's so good. Like obviously you can win if the tackle can't even touch you, and he's got a great bend. He plays with his hair on fire against the run. He's fearless, high school wrestler. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's a classic. It's such a classic.
It's like your ability to understand like biomechanics and the physics behind moving other people who might be stronger or taller or whatever it might be than you is invaluable. You often have it with offensive linemen, particularly guards and centers, but to have it as an edge rusher, love that. So good. Weaknesses, like you say, Marshall, not that concerned with what we're seeing at the Senior Bowl. He's getting lots of oohs and ahs when he's running through Josh Connolly. Absolutely love it. I think he's going to continue to tear it up. But, it's an understandable point of hesitation for some people. I think he's going to be a top 15 lock if he continues to play like 100%. He has. I think he was misused at Marshall. I think 17 sacks and 56 pressures was doing him a disservice. He played very tight to the offensive line. What I mean by that is he played very close to the tackle, basically. And at some point, with how Marshall had their defensive front, if they had a certain amount of guys, he would move from a 2-point stance. So when, like a sprinter, basically, you've got, one leg behind the other, ready to just like wide receivers do, you're ready to go. But when there was a certain, either maybe a personnel or a certain amount of numbers on the defensive line, he'd go into a square stance. So he'd have his left foot and right foot parallel, like almost like a cornerback waiting in coverage. And obviously that completely takes away a massive advantage of speed because you've got to put one foot back to explode off it. So I thought that was really odd. And I also thought how close he played to the offensive line was weird. He played almost like a 4-tech or like a 3-4 defensive end, like head up over the tackle. When you want him outside the tackle, you want him working in space. So I thought that was a bit odd. And I think that will definitely not be the case in the NFL. I don't know why you'd have Mike Green in a square stance at the line of scrimmage, head up over a tackle. Like, get this guy in the blocks as a wide 9, as, a 5-tech, whatever. And I think his pro comp is Hassan Reddick, when Hassan Reddick was good and playing.
Yeah, no, Dom, I agree. I think there's a lot to like there, especially the production. So many edge rushers out of college. I think back to, Rashawn Gary's of previous years. All these people with all the tools who can't put it together. And seeing someone coming out of college who has the production that you should see, I love. And it means it's only going to get better. It can't get worse. It's one of the highest floors, highest ceiling pass rushers, which is what you want in a top 10 pick. For me, he went from someone who... you were hearing stuff about on Twitter, he's my diamond in the rough guy, to now being a locked top 10 pick, and especially after the Senior Bowl, Tom. So I completely agree. Big fan of Mike Green.
Yeah, big Mike Green fan club over here. And then last but certainly not least, surprising absolutely no one, who is your number one edge rusher in this class?
My number one edge rusher is one of, if not the best player in the entire draft, is Abdul Carter, the edge out of Penn State. And the first thing when you see him, when you turn on the film, is the number 11, which, if you're a fan of the draft, if you're a fan of the NFL, is Micah Parsons' number. And to say these two are similar prospects is true. They used to be off-ball linebackers, much like Michael Williams, but this is their first year playing out-and-out defensive end, and these guys are game wreckers, Dom. He is the perfect mix of the Mike Green success and pass rush, the Mike Green production with the Michael Williams, with the James Pierce Jr. athleticism. It's such a rare breed to see. All you need to do is turn on the college football playoff highlights and watch him dominate games. Watch the SMU game, watch the Notre Dame game, even though they lost. He absolutely tears it up, and he will be a difference maker day one, which is why many are mocking him as the number one overall pick.
I have him as my first ranked player in this draft. I think he could be the best player in it. I think that right now there are currently players that are better than him. I think Travis Hunter is better than him. I think Tetairoa McMillan is better than him. But I think that Abdul Carter has the highest ceiling out of anyone in this draft class. And I don't even really think it's close, to be honest, even with people like Travis Hunter. So you're right to point out the Micah Parsons comparisons, moving from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher, wearing number 11, playing at Penn State. He had a pretty slow start, was finding his feet in a new position full time. Of course, he was always excelling as a blitzer when he was playing linebacker, but to move full time to edge is a change in position. And he had a slow start, like I said, but finished red hot. 66 pressures, 13 sacks. He is athletic as they come. Like there's plays of him chasing down runs that are going away from where he is on the defensive line. So if he's playing on the right side of the defensive line, the offensive running away from him on the other side, and he's chasing it down and tackling the running back from behind. He has the physical traits to be a double-digit sack guy in the NFL. The Notre Dame game was insane. 8 pressures, 1 sack with a bad shoulder. Like, he's playing with one arm basically, and he had 8 pressures. Like, he was the reason why they had any sort of shot in that game, frankly. And what I loved watching, even more than the Notre Dame game, was the Maryland tape. Oh my God. It is nuts. If you can only watch one game from one player in this draft class, I would say watch Abdul Carter versus Maryland. Like, he looks like Micah Parsons in that game. Because of that off-ball linebacker history, he can play like standing up over the A-gap like Micah Parsons done in the past. Like, he doesn't just have to rush off the edge. He can come as, talking about someone that's versatile now, Micah Parsons can do exactly that. And Micah Parsons, Jesus. Abdul Carter.
Yeah, no.
Freudian slip.
I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, Freudian slip. Easy to make, easy to make.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't think he is Micah Parsons now. I think he just has that potential to be a great level of player. But that Maryland tape is absolutely insane. He is just embarrassing these poor tackles, these poor guards. Like, it is just dominant tape, absolutely dominant. He's so explosive. He's got an insanely high motor. He's physical. He's aggressive. 22.3% pass rush win rate. Weaknesses, I think his play strength is still developing. I think when I first watched the game, his first game was against, who was his first game against? Damn, I can't remember. But in his first game, when he was playing edge full time, you could see he was kind of struggling with the physicality. Like, he was kind of getting dominated by some of the offensive linemen. He was ending up on the floor quite a bit. And that's obviously improved throughout the season, but I think that's going to be something that he will find hard going to the NFL, where only having that 1 year of full-time edge play. He's still quite raw, like I said. He's not Micah Parsons coming out at all, but I think that with the right tools, with the right scheme, with the right support, he can become that. But he's not a bulletproof prospect. Like, there's not an impossibility that a team drafts Abdul Carter, thinks that they're going to get a Myles Garrett, a Nick Bosa, a TJ Watt, a Micah Parsons, and just basically leave him and don't give him any support, any help, any development. He's not going to end up like that, like those guys. Like, he's not going to end up like those guys. He needs honing. He needs developing. And, I mean, but regardless, I'd compare him to Will Anderson as that kind of slightly lighter edge rusher. And I mean, look at how impactful Will Anderson's been for the Texans. Like, Will Anderson is one of the better edge rushers in the league. So he's got physical traits for days, still pretty raw, but a very high ceiling. And I don't know how you can't have Abdul Carter as your first ranked edge rusher.
Well, Dom, and he has what everyone else's weaknesses are their strengths. He can tackle, unlike Shamar Stewart. He can play every down, unlike James Pierce Jr. He's probably better in coverage than Michael Williams. He's more versatile than Mike Green. All the stuff that these are their players' negatives, Abdul Carter has them all. He's a 3-down linebacker, run stopper, pass rusher. He can do everything, and this is only after 1 year of playing the position full time.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with projection when you can see the linear progression of a player. So saying that he's going to get, 15 sacks, obviously is massive projection, but you can see that happening because of what's happened in the past and see why he's getting better game in, game out. So he's only rising up draft boards. He's only rising up, mock drafts, and I'm all here for it, Dom.
So am I, Nu. So am I, and I'm sure everyone else is as well. So, Nu, recap your top 5 for me.
So my top 5, number 5, I got Jack Sawyer, the defensive end out of Ohio State. Number 4, James Pierce Jr., Tennessee. 3, Michael Williams, Georgia. 2, Mike Green, Marshall. And number 1, Abdul Carter out of Penn State.
So I've got 5, Shamar Stewart. More of a defensive lineman. If I had to put a pure edge, I'd put Jack Sawyer in there because he's 6. But 5, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. 4, Michael Williams from Georgia. 3, Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, who I might put 2. But at the moment, my second ranked edge rusher is James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee. And finally, one Abdul Carter, Penn State. So that's been our edge rankings. If you agree, disagree, let us know in the comments. I mean, these are pretty bulletproof now. I feel like we're watching these guys' tapes. Like these are pretty informed opinions here. So if you think one of us has catastrophic ball knowledge, then feel free to let us know. But also, if you agree, don't be scared to show us some love in the comments. We definitely appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more draft content. But I've been your host, Dom Corbs. That's my co-host, Nick Corbs. We've been on Sportsmanlike Conduct. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.